Hey guys, what's up? It's me, Thomas. Tonight we're back here with Oversimplified with mini war number 3, the Battle of Hastings, aka the war that changed the English language. You'll see what I mean in a minute. But for now, how about we just hop in and get this war underway? So be sure to like, subscribe for more. Hope you enjoy. Let's go.
This video was made possible by Skillshare, an online learning community
I'm not sure
with
if it
over
has a real
17,000
name.
classes
Does
in
it?
just about anything you can
I
imagine.
think we mostly
Keep watching until the
remember
end
from
of the
the
video
Battle
to
of
learn how you
Hastings.
can get your first 2 months for free. England in the Middle Ages.
Ooh.
The sun is shining, the
Nice
birds are
face.
singing, the children are playing in the village square. What a wonderful time to be alive.
Hello.
Hey, you're dying of dysentery.
Aw.
And also are being raided by Vikings.
Well,
What an
crap.
awful time to be alive. It's the year 900. Europe is a Viking's wet dream. Raids galore. Hey, you want to go raid
Roll
Paris?
the Viking.
Okay.
Oh yeah,
That
roll the
particular
walker,
raid
right?
didn't go too well, but the king of the Franks said, you guys are
Trust
pretty tough and
simple.
scary. How about we give you land in northern
think I
France, and
remember.
in return, you protect us from other Vikings? And it was agreed. The Vikings set up the Duchy of Normandy, and then they went full-on French, converting to Christianity, learning the language, and making babies with the locals.
Ah.
England also had its fair share of Viking problems. In the 800s, Danish Vikings had conquered most of the country,
Danelaw.
but the Anglo-Saxons eventually managed to kick them out, although they left behind a bunch of Viking settlers. Now this guy's king. He sucks.
There we go.
Replace him
All
with his
fair.
brother. And he was
Edgar
like,
the
hey baby,
Faith-
how you doing? And
Peaceful.
had a son, and then turned around and was like, hey baby, how you doing? And had
So,
another
fair,
son.
baby.
And then he died and no one was sure which son to make king. This one, because he's older.
Edward
Not if I have
Martyr.
anything to do with it.
Ow.
That works for us too. Then he
Arthur
grew up and
the
married the Duke
Unredded.
of Normandy's daughter and had a bunch of
Normandy.
kids. Remember this
Edward,
one.
go to
He's
Alfred.
important. Then his advisors
Yeah,
came to him
got
and
it.
said, hey man,
Hello.
all those Viking settlers that are living here, they might
Yeah?
band together and kill you. Well then, why don't we kill them first? And so it was. This pissed off the
Christ sakes,
Danish
man.
king, who launched an invasion, and the
Hey,
Vikings
coming.
conquered England once again. Then the Anglo-Saxons unconquered it, then the Vikings reconquered it. The king's family had to go into exile, including Edward. Remember him? He went to Normandy where he lived for 30 years. He and his brother Alfred tried to return to England to retake the throne from the Vikings, but they were betrayed by the Earl of Wessex, who said, hey
God
friend,
damn it,
I'll take you
Galway.
to London where all the nobles are waiting to make you king. Oh no, look out, red hot
Look out,
poker in the
aye.
eyes. I can't see. And thus you can't be king. Edward
Run.
then escaped back to Normandy. After a few more Viking kings came and went, one finally died without an heir, and Edward was called back to England where he became king. And that's where our story begins.
Oh, that was fast. Yeah, I was right. Battle of Hastings. Nice.
Here's the
Everyone's
thing
right.
about becoming a king in the Middle Ages. Often your entire country won't support you at first. You can be vulnerable to rebellions, and it's up to you to take control. Fortunately,
And that, my friend, is middle-age politics. Basically, you don't like the ruler, just overthrow him in a coup. But nowadays, luckily we got elections. Otherwise, I think we got a lot of dead bodies on our hands, especially with the modern weapons. Oh boy. Anyway,
for Edward, there was already a super powerful guy who had a lot of control over England, and if Edward could get his support, then England would be his. Who
Who
is
you got?
this guy?
Oh,
piss,
you
it's the guy who
again?
gave my brother the red hot poker in the eyes. After an awkward
This
moment
prick.
where Edward exiled Godwin from the country, he eventually had to give in and let him keep his earldom, possibly after Godwin gave him a bunch of gold and said he was very, very sorry. King Edward also married Godwin's daughter. Then Godwin died, and his massive fortune was passed down to his sons, who all became
Harold?
earls. In particular, this one became the new
Harold
Earl of
Godwinson.
Wessex.
Okay.
Harold Godwinson was now King Edward's brother-in-law. He was a close advisor to the king, a brave warrior who had proven himself in battle against the
Well,
Welsh, and in many
okay,
ways
then
he
he's
was
with
almost
that
like a
name?
co-king. Uh-oh, Edward got old and he's on his deathbed. Possibly for religious reasons, or maybe because he wasn't happy about having to marry her.
Probably the
He
latter,
didn't appoint his
considering
wife,
what Godwin
and as a
did.
result has no kids, meaning there's no obvious heir to the throne, meaning I'm gonna be king. He does have a grandnephew, it could be him.
Edgar Althling. Okay.
No, let's go with me.
Harsh.
Just one problem. I mentioned that Edward's
Yeah.
mother was a Norman.
Oh,
Edward
Emma
grew up in
Normandy.
Normandy, and he had a lot of Norman friends. The current Duke of Normandy was William the
William the
Bastard.
Bastard.
Why was he called the Bastard? One day his father was sneaking out of his castle when his advisors said, "Where are you going?" To the tanner's shop? Why?
Why?
To get a tan.
About
But that was a lie. Firstly, because tanners give you leather, not
Hide.
tans. And secondly, because he was really going to see
Hey,
the
baby, how
tanner's
you
daughter.
doing?
One thing leads to another, and out comes
And
baby William, born out of wedlock. Thus, an absolute bastard.
The bastard.
His father died when William was 7 or 8, and he became the new Duke. He spent most of his childhood narrowly avoiding assassination, which probably turned him into the big balls tough guy he's remembered as today. In
We'll see more of
1051,
that
the
later.
town of Alençon tried to rebel against him, and the townspeople beat on dead animal skins as an insult to his commoner mother. William was furious, and he
Get
responded
him?
by, well, let's just say it wasn't
Oh,
pretty.
God.
That's the kind of guy we're dealing with here. William and
know.
Edward were good friends, and Edward allegedly promised that William could have the English throne after him. A decade
Thanks,
later,
man.
Harold Godwinson even visited William and pledged an oath to him over holy relics, promising that William could be the next king of England. Although
Thank
it's
you.
possible Harold only did it because William was holding his family hostage.
Could
So
be
when
either
William
or.
heard that the king was on his deathbed, he said, "Hooray,
All right,
I'm going to be king."
king.
So now you have two extremely powerful men who both think they're about to become the next
AK
king.
Four.
But wait,
Another one.
this guy is
Harold
the king of
Hardrada.
Norway. He spent most of his life as a warrior for hire, fighting for whoever would give him the most gold. You name a place, he probably fought a war there. Poland? Yep. Estonia?
Correct.
Yep. Against pirates in the Mediterranean? Yep. The Holy Lands? Sicily? And Bulgaria? Yep. He got
So basically, Warrior King Harold now. Or Hardrada, sorry. We got a Godwin, we got William, now we got Hardrada. This is going to be interesting, to say the least. So, yeah. And like we saw earlier, now we got 3 guys fighting for the English throne now. Let's get to it.
crazy rich off the back of it and was swimming in gold. Then he returned home and became king. One of the previous Norwegian kings had made an
Decades
agreement
earlier.
with one of England's Viking kings, saying that when that Viking king died, the king of Norway would get the English throne. Hardrada felt that because of this agreement, he was now entitled to the English throne. He was also eager to go on one last big conquest that would turn him into a legend. So when he got word that Edward was on his deathbed, he thought, I'm going to invade England, and then I'm going to be king. So now we have 3 extremely powerful
3
men
people
who
saying,
all think
"I'm
they're
gonna be
about to
king."
become the next king of England, and that
Look.
means somebody's probably about to get hurt. Back in England, Harold Godwinson is watching over the dying King Edward. Suddenly, he comes out with a shocking announcement. Hey,
Here we go.
everyone, gather in.
Yeah,
That's
come in,
it.
come in.
Come closer. Don't be shy. Okay, so I've got bad news. The king is dead.
Oof.
I know, very sad.
Ouch.
But good news. He said that I should be the next king. So, hooray for me. And, oh yeah, he said that if he once told anyone else they could be king, that he doesn't like them anymore, and they should just stay in Normandy.
Harsh.
And also he said that no one should ask any further questions. Okay, good talk. Go do whatever it is you do.
Yeah, good luck
Usually
with
it took
that.
months of preparation to crown a new king, but Harold rushed it, and he had himself crowned the same day King Edward was buried. In Normandy, William's advisors came to him and said, "Hey, Big Willie, bad news. Harold Godwinson has taken the English throne." And William was furious, so he sent an envoy to Harold who said, "William says you stole the throne and demands you immediately return it to him." Let me think about that.
No.
No.
There we go.
He said no. That bastard. Wait, I thought you were the bastard.
Dude.
Uncool. William immediately began gathering his
there's
armies
that.
together and preparing for an invasion of England.
Ah!
Now, killing a king was generally frowned upon in old-timey Europe because they were considered to have been chosen by God himself. So back in Normandy, William had to get God on his
Oh, yeah,
side. He needed
Christianity.
the Pope's blessing for his conquest. So he went to the Pope and said, "Godwinson made an oath to me over holy relics, and then he usurped the throne. Can I kill him?"
Well,
Sure, why not?
thank
So
you.
the Pope gave William his blessing, meaning William now had God on his side. Everything was ready to go. Just one problem.
Huh?
The wind.
Oh.
It was blowing the wrong way, and William had to wait with his army in Normandy, while Godwinson waited with his army in the south of England. They waited, and waited, and waited, and then William said screw it and sailed for England and got shipwrecked because the wind was blowing
that
the wrong
didn't
way.
work.
So then he decided to keep on waiting. They waited for 2 months and the wind never changed. Eventually Godwinson got bored and also ran out of food for his soldiers. So he sent them all home and he returned to London. The south
enough.
coast was undefended and all William could do was keep waiting. While the northerly wind kept William in Normandy, it was carrying Hardrada and his Viking army to England.
Uh-oh.
Hardrada landed
I
near
guess
the
they
old
forgot about
Viking city
Hardrada.
of York and defeated a regional army led by the northern earls,
Pulled forward.
and York surrendered. When Godwinson heard about this,
Oh, boy.
he must have been pretty upset. He had just disbanded his army, and now he had to gather them
Oh,
all
wait, we got a
together again
problem.
and march all the way
Boy.
north. He made the exhausting journey in just 4 days, which is
Dang.
crazy quick, and he caught the Vikings
back
off guard
then, yeah.
and unprepared for battle. The 2 armies stood on either side of the river
Stanford.
Derwent. Legend says that a berserker Viking single-handedly held the only bridge crossing the river,
Damn.
dodging arrows and fending off attackers, until some English soldiers got under the bridge in a barrel
the
and
name
gave him
was.
the old spear in the jewels. This gave the Vikings enough time to form a shield wall, but because they'd been caught off guard, many weren't wearing their chainmail and armor, and the English eventually defeated them, killing Hardrada, and with him, bringing the Viking era in England to an end.
Or him. Yeesh.
Finally.
Let's
William's
invade.
fleet of over 700 ships and 14,000 men set sail and landed on the English coast at Pevensey and set up camp near Hastings. And Harold was still all the way in York. His
Oh,
exhausted
goddammit.
army had to march all the way south just days
Again.
after their battle with the Vikings.
Yeesh,
Harold
no
made it
rest.
to London and considered just staying there and waiting for William to come to him.
Yeah,
but William
about that.
forced Harold's hand by burning down a bunch of villages. Harold's army set out and met William's on the 14th of October, 1066. And both sides prepared themselves
go,
for the
the
Battle of
legendary
Hastings.
Battle of Hastings.
The English were on a hill, so they decided to stay there because
So,
it was a good
basically the
defensive
high ground.
position. The Normans approached, and the 2 sides probably spent a while yelling at each other. William and the Normans had a few tactical advantages over the English. The first were the archers. The Normans sent volley after volley of arrows at the English, who formed a shield wall in defense. Then William sent his infantry up the hill. The English threw anything they had at them, and the Normans couldn't break through the shield wall. Then the Normans' next tactical advantage came into play. William sent his cavalry up the hill, but even they struggled to break through the shield wall defenses. Wave after wave of infantry and cavalry came, and Harold knew all he had to do was let the Normans exhaust themselves and he would win. But then something a bit strange happened. It's possible the Normans incorrectly believed William had been killed. Maybe they lost their will to fight against the shield wall, or maybe it was an intentional deception tactic. But suddenly, the Norman forces turned and ran away from the English. Believing they had won, the English broke their shield wall and chased down the retreating Normans, who then turned around, encircled the English troops, and cut them down. In the chaotic fighting that followed, Harold Godwinson was killed, the most popular theory being that he took an arrow in the eye. The English were defeated, and William had won. He was no more just a bastard. Now, he was a conqueror. At first, the English nobles were reluctant to make him king, but William burned down a few more villages, and the nobles eventually gave in and offered him the crown. As he was coronated, the local villagers in Westminster let out a cheer of support, but William thought it was a riot, so he burned down the village. William then had to go on a long and costly campaign of quelling rebellions and burning down villages all over England to force the people into submission. And England went through a massive transformation under its new Norman rule. English nobles were replaced with Normans. They built castles and grand cathedrals, but one of the most interesting changes occurred within the English language. The Normans brought their dialect of French to England, and it merged with Old English in ways we still live with today. First of all, the Normans were obviously the ones in power, so words related to power like government, judge, castle, and crown come from the Normans. Words that are considered posher or more refined are usually the Norman ones. At first, the Anglo-Saxons probably weren't that friendly to the Normans, while the Normans likely weren't that amiable towards the Anglo-Saxons. An Anglo-Saxon might come into a room, but a Norman would enter into a chamber. An Anglo-Saxon might buy themselves a shirt, while a Norman would purchase a blouse. And while that filthy peasant's new shirt may be fair, the Norman blouse is absolutely beautiful. The Normans actually considered some Anglo-Saxon words so crude that I can't even say them on YouTube. But there's more. Ask an Anglo-Saxon what job he does, and he might respond with some low-level trade, such as a baker, a miller, or a shoemaker. But a Norman has a skilled trade, like a painter, a tailor, or a merchant. The Anglo-Saxon farmers working in the fields owned many cows, pigs, and sheep, but once they were served up in a Norman banquet, they became beef, pork, and mutton. And written English changed too. Since many Anglo-Saxons couldn't write, the written language was romanticized. Your annoying friend that says cool whip might just be speaking an Old English dialect, as the Anglo-Saxons originally wrote it when, where, and what, but the Normans swapped the W and H around, and the long English A vowel sounded more like an O to the Normans, so you can thank them that you live in a home, not a ham.
Ham?
Hey, fun fact about William, the man...
And that's, Skillshare, pretty sure. So there you go, the Battle of Hastings. Let me know what you guys think, and until next time, like, subscribe for more. See ya!